protecting something, which is a viable conquest strategy, as weird as that sounds. Oh, I thought he had a fake mustache on for a second. It's just
that would be amazing.
He's wearing over his mouth.
Oh, that would be amazing too. But just look at Language Hacker's hand. Yeah, just these cards. Sunwell Initiate, Robe's Protection Mutinous. I mean, who could wish for a better set of cards?
Yep.
Throws away all the rubbish cards, sees what else he's put in his deck. And I'm going to talk in, slightly memey fashion about this deck because it's slightly memey to look at. But we must remember that Language Hacker and Monsanto were basically the first people to bring the Shadow Priest deck in the form that we knew it for the next 5 weeks, all the way back in week 2, I think it was. And, I was a little bit skeptical. Oh, look at all these Murlocs. Oh, look at these naught-cost Desk Imps. Turned out that deck was the staple deck for about 4 or 5 weeks after that. So, doing something weird does not mean it is bad, especially, as you've already pointed out, in Conquest format, where you can get to target something. The downside is you do bring a bad deck, right? So if your target slips through in one of the games, you are left with a bad deck, as Bunny Hopper kind of found out in the last round with Paladin.
Yeah. Yep. And it's not a bad deck. It has some weaknesses that are hard to look past when you're talking about, the best of the best in the metagame. Let's put it that way. Gets a Prison Canuck first. Ogremancer, Moonfang, both fantastic tools. Maybe not to have early, but it looks like Language Hacker has some ways to fill out his curve. Flood's curve is honestly pretty good. He's got draw. He's got ramp. Really just missing Anaconda to get this ball rolling quite extensively. Also, one thing I wanted to point out, Language Hacker also mentioned that winning in round 1 against Fled is incredibly important. Just because he doesn't think he has a great shot against McBannerface. Because McBannerface doesn't have Anaconda Druid, does have OTK Demon Hunter, but his OTK Demon Hunter has Magtheridon in it, which is the ultimate tech card that pretty much nullifies his entire lineup, his lineup strategy. So he mentioned that this is very important for him to win because he thinks this is a much better matchup, and if he says he's very likely to get out of group and do well from the tournament if he can just beat Fled in this first round.
And he hasn't really, given how much anti-stuff he has in his deck, he hasn't picked up large amounts of it, has he? He's obviously still got the capability to just hit Druid with minions. That's one of the things you want to do to Druids all the time anyway. But he hasn't actually picked up a lot of the cards that straight up defeat the Druid. And Fled's picked up the ramp, the Anaconda, and a load of stuff to go with it. This could turn nasty for Language Hacker very early on.
Yeah, and if Anaconda Druid gets through on the first try against his lineup, that doesn't bode well for the rest of the series. But we shall see. Yep,
we shall indeed. This is quite a lot of damage already that Language Hacker can set up. I'm just concerned for him with Fled being able to Eclipse, Overgrowth, maybe even get into an alignment or an Anaconda, whichever way he wants to go with that, straight away. And Language Hacker's got a few pirates.
Yeah, we were just waiting on the Athletic Studies choice. He can actually coin out a 10 Trasher here. It would delay his Moonfang / Ogremancer, but it puts so much power on board that I think it's worth it.
Yeah, when your deck doesn't do the thing you brought it to do, and it turns itself into an aggro deck, don't turn that opportunity down. If it wants to be an aggro deck against Druid, okay, well, aggro decks against Druid is a fine second choice. Let's just go in there and hit people. Fled well aware that this is a key moment. This Lunar Eclipse in particular needs to be correctly timed.
I wonder if there's anything else he can go for here. If he goes Lunar Eclipse and then Overgrowth...
So that's the default play, right? That's what your eye's drawn to straight away.
Yeah, but maybe he needs to fight for board and just forget the ramp, because what would he be ramping into in that case is the big thing. I don't think he can even afford to Celestial Alignment, because as soon as he does... maybe he needs to. That's really tough, honestly. Very difficult. Mark of the Wild is probably the best option there, just because of the fact that it is free with Anaconda and gives a taunt immediately to start blocking some damage. He's going to take some damage, though. That's for certain.
Yeah, I feel like his whole thought process that turn was exactly the same and in the same order as yours, which is, here's the default play, but I've got a Bloom and an Anaconda. What can I do with that? And you try and make it do something good, and actually he hasn't actually got that much that goes with 0 or 1 mana with Anaconda, so decided to wait, see if he can rip something off the top, because if he rips a Fungal Fortunes or something like that now and goes Anaconda, draw some cards, loads of mana with a Lightning Bloom he's preserved, he could have an absolute monstrous turn next turn. But you can see he wasn't happy with the default play. He just went there because the rope started burning and he hadn't found anything better.
Yep. All right. There's lethal being represented on board, so cannot go with Celestial Alignment. Which means that,
yeah,
I always look
some
for
weights.
Germination.
Yeah, that would have helped.
Because then he'd be able to go 2 taunts, Lady Anaconda, Mark of the Wild, and then Germination.
Would a Solar Eclipse have helped?
Well, he can still go Anaconda or Innervate Anaconda, Solar Eclipse, Mark of the Wild.
Right. Which isn't huge, but it keeps him alive.
Yeah, and I mean, that's about the only thing he really can do at this point, I feel, is keep himself alive. Hero Power also keeps him alive, theoretically.
Oh!
Language Hacker would just need 1 damage, and he's got the freebooter in hand. So I really don't mind the risk there from Fled to say, all right, you have to have one damage to kill me. Because just going for Lady Anaconda and Mark of the Wild, that gives up his win condition. He needed to hit, draw into Germination, into Cenarian Wards, into, whatever, the very next turn in order to have a reasonable chance at winning that game. So, counted the damage, took the risk, didn't pay off, and 1 down for Language Hacker. Here we go.
Yeah, we might see a lot of this. This feels like he's outwitted everybody. Monsanto must be concerned, having basically brought this lineup last week and then not bringing it this week. And he is in this group. I wonder what level of betrayals took place. Who thought of the deck? Who decided to bring it last week for Monsanto? And when did Language Hacker decide to use it in the same group as Monsanto this week? I'm very excited by all the possibilities, TJ.
All right. So the core is the same. Has Watch Posts, Ogremancer, Mutinous, Mukla, Cold Neophytes. And then outside of that, it's the Elemental package with a special shout out to Bolner Hammerbeak.
There's some phrases for you, yeah.
Oh, those are certainly phrases.
Jambray's been trying to make that card work forever. If only he had thought to put 6,000 Watch Posts and Ogres and Mutinous in the deck. It's obvious to anybody, really. This is actually a hand. Player just wants to get this druid out of here so he can play some Hearthstone.
Yeah, I mean, this is the toughest matchup.
Yep.
That he has. If we take a look at the bans, Fled had his Warlock banned away.
He did.
And Language Hacker had his Paladin banned away, which the hand buff Paladin is the closest thing to a real deck. So.
I mean, Language Hacker is just going to win this by drawing all the real cards in all of his decks.
Yeah.
It's just, what can I do if I've accidentally put 16 Watch Posts in my lineup? I know, just draw the other cards. I'll be fine. And obviously, I'm memeing to a large extent here because those cards would also be fine. That's the whole point. And I want to know what happens though if he draws half of what I'm going to call the real cards and half of the tech cards. That's when he might run into trouble. I think he'll win all of the games where he draws all of the curve like this, and I think he'll win all of the games where he draws all of the tech. But the ones where he draws a 1-4 and then a 3-4, a 2-4 watch post, and then doesn't do anything, those are the games he might struggle over the course of the next 2 days.
Yeah. All right.
What I love about it being... Go on.
I was going to say, Bolner Hammerbeak's taken care of.
Yep. Always got to take care of him. But what I love about this being playoffs is you know that he's serious. You know he's using, I think Sotta was describing very well earlier, sort of, this is Conquest. You can use the format to your advantage rather than just bringing some decks. We will see other players who have just brought the best decks, and that's acceptable too. But there are rules in Conquest, and you can use those rules to your advantage. And Language Hacker is doing that to the maximum. I'm loving it one way or the other, whatever happens. Good for him.
Yep. This is brutal. I mean, it's going to get something on board, which is probably the most important thing at this stage. The Far Watch post is not like the end-all, be-all. Because if Flood's going to win, it's going to be off Mana Conjure, which is going to make things cheap anyway, or off like Celestial Alignment. But, I mean, how does he beat Ogremancer when his board's being taken care of? This is quite unfortunate.
What I'm loving about this is Fled is one of our more on-edge characters through the regular season. You know, when it's going badly, you know it. When it's going well, you know it. But this week, he's resigned to his fate right from the start. He's playing as well as he can, obviously, but he's seen his cards. He's just smiling and nodding. He's like, "What can I do?" Like this, he's had a chance to practice the lineups. He knows the sort of trouble he's been in right from the start here, and you know, the most important week he's had. And he's just taking it. He's just like, okay, what can I do?
Oh, man. Imagine popping off at a Crossroads watch post. I certainly understand it, because this makes his board unkillable. Fled has zero way to interact with this whatsoever.
I predict at some point...
I was going to say, he's not going to be able to even play anything on the board, but it doesn't matter, because all of a sudden it's going to get big. Fled's only hope is to alignment. He's not dead on board because two of these things can attack. Or is he dead on board?
He might be now.
He's dead on board with Serpentine Portal. He's dead on board with Serpentine Portal. Oh my goodness.
This is going to be so fun for viewing, at least. Not so much if you're playing against it. Fled taking it the best he can. I do predict at some point, TJ, we are going to see somebody just miscount killing things on a watch post board over this weekend. It might not be here because there's some in the other regions as well, but you calculate it and you just miss a +1 anywhere and it just ruins everything.
Yep.
You're loving it, aren't you? You're absolutely loving it, let's face it.
I mean, this is great. This is great. I mean, this is kind of what you want to see in Conquest, right? Is players taking the format and capitalizing on the weakness of the expected lineup. We've had new metagames essentially every week, whether it was because we changed formats from Conquest to Last Year Standing, or because there were balance changes, right? Or, you know, buffs, nerfs, that kind of thing. So what these, you know, solved metagames give us is the opportunity for this. And, I mean, even Fled's like Death Rattle Demon Hunter is in that ballpark, right? It's a Death Rattle Demon Hunter that hard runs Glide. Like... Obviously, he's trying to maybe soft target OTK Demon Hunter. It's kind of cool, and to an extent, Warlock. Right? I feel like this is a decent matchup against the Handlock as well, because Glide oftentimes good against Handlock. It's got these sticky boards that Soul Rend doesn't clear, and then it's got a ton of reach with Illidar Inquisitor and Felsteel Executioner. So. It is a board-based deck, no, thou know. What I meant to say was though, comma, now. So maybe this is where Language Hacker starts to struggle a little bit. But he's the Druid has still not gotten through. And that's kind of the big matchup that's Language Hacker's strategy is going to hinge upon. It's just Priest left remaining. It is a Shadow Priest, but it's got a whole lot of fun tools in it.
Let's see. Has it got any watch posts in it, TJ? Has it got any mutinous? Has it got any Mooklas? Has it got those sort of cards? I'm sensing a common, a common sort of, how does it go? Theme here?
Yep, it does. Sure as heck does. There it is in all of its glory. The same package is there. Cold Neophytes, Far Watch Post, King Mookla, Crossroads Watch Post, Ogremancer, and Mutinous. All of those cards are in all of his decks. And then from there, it's kind of just the quote-unquote best cards from Shadow Priest. Only Raise Dead as the spell with special shout-out to Angry Mancrick. So we'll get that Shadow hero power. And then the standard Shadow Priest curve of Void Touch Attendant, Frowsle Freshman, Twilight Deceptor, Colteron Chaplain. The standard Shadow Priest curve, Sunwell Initiate.
yeah, like you do. Sunwell Initiate, which I've just left open, by the way, today. I just left a page with it open so I don't forget what it does all day. Because I've had to Google it twice. I thought, no, I'm just not going to remember this card. I don't know what this card does. I'm just going to leave it open on a separate page to remind me.
So good in Arena. One of the best.
Makes sense.
And it's a neutral common. So...
I wonder if it'll be replaced though. Like Chucky has already spoiled that in the next mini set there will be a 3-mana 3/4.
Oh, whoa, that's insane! Who would have guessed?
I know. I hope he hasn't broken any, really important NDAs or any with that sort of important information. But yeah, that's just a thing. Right. Now it's split with the watch post. What's happening?
Ooh, yeah. So this is we're approaching the downside of Language Hacker's lineup is that against pretty much everything else, it just doesn't have that much stuff. Ogremancer just not that great against Fled's board-based decks, his board-based strategies. He could just not play spells and be okay. So I wonder what's even the plan here. I guess it's just look for the Raise Dead. Gonna play it now, but it's only getting back to Colteron Chaplain.
Okay. Let's make sure he gets it rather than getting other things back, so fair enough. But already he is fighting for the board. He's got the pack mule just to ruin everything. There's a point this
But how much does it cost?
Everything, TJ. Everything. Dark and Chia said it was fixed this morning, and the very next thing that happened is that everything broke, so I don't think it is fixed.
Yep. Likely story.
Well, he does have some 7 health minions coming soon. They're quite good at occupying the board. If he's not dead by then.
Blessings, mate.
Oh no. Shout out to Hacker for playing the right one for us, though, so we could enjoy the game.
Well, the other one costs 3.
You look like you love
There's that
a
as well.
deal.
Yeah. We can't see how much it costs.
Yeah, just mystery card.
It costs 3. Trust me.
I trust you, TJ. You wouldn't let me down. You haven't done yet. Alright, Hacker's got to decide whether he wants to break the spectator mode, get a mule, and shoot something down with his hero power. And that will depend a little bit on what he thinks is in Fled's hand, or whether he just wants to play an Ogremancer and fight for board with a chunky minion.
Problem is the Ogremancer gets challenged on board, but it does leave his other 2 minions alive if Fled were to trade in, unless, of course, the minion that, if a minion would pop out from the Beastmaster, it would be a Fell Rattler. So, I mean, Fled's draws are not fantastic. having both Illidari Inquisitors this early is usually not what you want to be seeing.
Yeah, he needs something massive next turn. Otherwise, Language Hacker could actually get into this. Of course, Language Hacker doesn't know that, which is a problem. Because you do tend to tiptoe around the opposing minions to some degree. No need to now, though. He knows exactly what he's up against.
No.
Oh, the watch post has really done its job, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So,
oh, there goes. There's the 3-mana pack mule.
like, without the watch post, Language Hacker would have had some pretty strong fights here. But as long as Fled doesn't whiff on his next draw, which we may one day know and we may not ever know.
There it is. Tusk Piercer is a whiff. Yeah, Tusk Piercer is a whiff. So here's an opening for Language Hacker here. We're still 2 turns away from Inquisitor. Now, when Fled does reach turn 8, he will certainly have a weapon equipped. Big question here actually is whether or not he wants to actually kill off the Persistent Peddler by trading it over the 2/3 to pull out the other one from his deck. But because it's a Persistent Peddler, I think he'd rather have the board presence because even if he draws it, he could just trade it away.
Sorry, TJ. Yeah. Sorry, you have to carry on just for a second, TJ.
You got it. That's what I'm best at, is carrying on.
Until somebody tells you to carry on, I'm back.
Oh my god. How many backups do we have? Do we have any other backups? No? Okay. We'll get to the point where this game is. There we go. All right. Well, he top decked the Blackthorn and made a massive board, and then we got a quick glimpse of it right as Language Hacker conceded. So, despite some pretty poor draws in that mid game, he was able to make up for it with essentially a game-winning draw. So Fled will get his first win, 2-1. But again, the big matchup that we're going to be looking at is the Druid matchup. Though, I feel like Paladin is beatable, right? Because their boards aren't as sticky a lot of the time. So you can play kind of this board-centric matchup and then, get really far ahead. But, Blade Master Samuro at any point in the game will usually end things. So we'll see how it's going to go. There is some expensive stuff in Fled's deck. It will be all about the board control in the early game if Language Hacker is going to be able to take a win against this one.
Yep, and then we get to go on to that Druid after that. And so, first of all, he's going to try and take on the easier of the 2 steps. And Oh My Yogg is slightly irritating for the priest. You wouldn't think it would be, but they don't have many spells, so it just interferes with Raise Dead, which is a big deal. And obviously, the minions are kind of a straight fight, but it's a straight fight with a 1/1 hero power versus a 2 damage hero power when it comes down to it. The 1/1/1 is useless. 2 damage can shoot down a lot of the early Paladin minions to make way.
All right, here we go. Look at that hand. Beautiful. But
I mean,
it all gets, as beautiful as it is, it all gets tossed away. Oh, the Sunwell Initiate. There it is.
All right. He's got a curve as well, so could go well.
So does Fled, however. Pretty decent curve himself. Obviously, Pack Mule in the opening hand.
Oh, stop it.
God. He's like 5 for 5 on Pack Mule draws right now in subsequent games. Killing me.
We can just make it up, TJ. We've done it before. We just make things up. We'll be fine. One thing that I guess isn't obvious when we're looking at the build of this deck is just how chunky some of these early minions are in all of the decks, because they're all the same.
Yeah.
The Sunwell and the Mukla, they're actually big things. If you don't deal with them really quickly with your spells that are sort of locked out, you are just going to lose to them with a lot of these decks.
Yeah, this is true. Unless you have board, like, how do you even deal with a Mukla? You can't just start throwing bananas on random things. I mean, I guess you can. There's nothing stopping you. Unless, of course, there's, like, a watch post. But other than that, there's nothing stopping you, you know.
And the fact you haven't got any things, but yeah.
Yeah.
But Fled has got things, so... Neophyte works well against bananas. Hacker...
I mean, what do you want him to do?
Stop drawing that card. Yep, just fighting for the board. And again, I was just going to say, Fled has got things, so the bananas would have a home. So Language Hacker's going to take his time on that. Looks like he played both parts of the Pack Mule because using the hero power is not particularly useful.
Mm-hmm. He's actually thinking. Cold Neophyte does make sense to an extent. The Pack Mule does play around the Blademaster Samuro a little bit more. But Cold Neophyte interrupts Fled's ability to reapply the Divine Shield to the Goody 2 shields. We can see that he doesn't even have it anyway. In fact, this curve has become a little bit awkward because he didn't play the Sword of the Fallen on 2. The Northwatch commanders have not been able to be activated. It could just be Knight of Anointment and then play a Northwatch commander without the activation, which is not the biggest of deals. He wants to fight for board, and I don't think having an Omayog or a Galloping Savior at this point is really going to do much.
Yeah, and he absolutely agrees with you. Just get those numbers on the board, and yeah, if you win the numbers fight, you'll be fine with all the other stuff anyway. If you can get to turn 6, get the hammer down, that would be a big deal for him, where he might be able to get some fight back going. And when I say get there, I mean he will get to turn 6, but will he get there with any sort of board going on? Is the question. Looks like he will.
Yep. And now he's finally able to get this draw. Righteous Protector is fantastic. I mean, next turn, assuming there's no anti-spell thing going on, Righteous Protector plus Blessing of Authority will end the game as well. So, and by the looks of it, Language Hacker, I mean, he doesn't even have any anti-spell things in hand at the moment regardless. Sunwall Initiate plus Hero Power is probably the play here, and then push some damage to base. But
the debut for Sunwall Initiate coming off the bench into the playing field in the playoffs. Waited all his life for this moment.
The light dim.
Yep, and this is where the game ends.
In 3, 2, 1. No clap.
Language Hacker is probably still going to stay in here.
Good for him.
Just because Fled's sort of low health?
Yeah, and he doesn't know Fled's hand as well. We can see that it's good enough, but it can just be rubbish sometimes in this particular deck. Not often, but sometimes.
Yeah.
We can see it's versatile enough.
May the light grant you peace.
I always want people to play on anyway. I dislike in tournaments when people concede early.
Yeah. I would have liked to see like an attack first with the Sword of the Fallen before the Hand of a Doll.
Yep, just in case of accidents.
Yeah, but maybe wanted to see what it was in case that Sword of the Fallen was going to go into a minion instead, right? So not a strict mistake, just maybe some slight optimization. Ooh, the watch post. Alright, not dead on board, but we can see that Fled does have lethal in the hand with the Hammer of the Narth.
Yeah, and then it's going to be 2 apiece. And then we're back to the Druid. And Fled's cheeky smiling face knows it. All he's thinking right now. Sip of water, get prepared. Oh dear, it's Druid versus this rubbish.
You have best.
Yep. And Language Hacker kind of knew that one. Obviously, he's going to stay in case Flood's hand was just absolutely terrible and didn't really have the power level to get there. But this is what the whole show has been about, right? For Flood's lineup, it's Druid. For Language Hacker facing off against pretty much any other lineup, it's kind of Druid Hunter still, but it's OTK Demon Hunter. His decks just don't really have that much power against anything that's board-centric, but it does have enough disruption in order to consistently beat those spell decks. So it's all going to come down to this Game 5, and said at the beginning, Language Hacker stressed the importance of winning in this first matchup against Fled because he doesn't like his chances versus McBannerface. So he thinks that a lot of his playoff chances were riding on the initial match alone. So a lot rides on just this single game of Tower Defense Shadow Priest versus Anaconda Druid.
And then he has to watch Fled versus McBanterface if he does win this and hope that Fled wins so he gets a chance at him again later on if it comes to that. Otherwise, if he loses to Monsanto, which he might well do, then he would not necessarily be in a good spot. But if he gets out of this group, I think he really fancies it as well. So this one game of Hearthstone is going to make a huge difference to this year's World Championships, oddly enough.
Job done.
Fled threw away the Overgrowth. Just a note. Gets Lunar Eclipse, which is kind of a must-have, honestly, as weird as that sounds. Does find Anaconda as well, but without the ramp, it's going to be some time before that's going to happen. If Fled expects a 2-drop, unless it's Cult Neophyte, he might wait for Nature Studies so he doesn't...
For no one.
Another Lunar Eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
That
going with
gives him
that
a bit
every
of
time.
time.
Yeah.
So now he'll be able to draw 2 or 3 cards to get into the game in some semblance of a way, unless he whiffs terribly.
Muzzle their magic.
And weirdly, this Neophyte's actually just going to achieve nothing. It's just going to help Fled spend his mana.
Yep. And cards Fled's looking for the most here is going to be the Glowfly Swarm. That's why he threw away Ramp. That's why he threw away Alignment. He's looking for really the only card that allows him to build some semblance of a board. So that's the biggest draw in his deck that we're going to look for. I mean, if he really wants to, he can kill this Void Touch Attendant. If he really, really wants to.
I think he really, really wants this coin, though, for the Arbor up, right?
Yeah, that's the...
Because coin Arbor up into Arbor up sounds like, especially when you say it quickly, coin Arbor up into Arbor up, it sounds like it's going to get a lot of work done against a Priest deck.
Yeah. Also, if he waits, there's a possibility for Flood to go... Alright, well, he didn't wait. I was going to say... Solar Eclipse, Lunar Eclipse, Arbor up next turn.
Okay.
But here we go. Board's starting to get big. That's still not a Glowfly Swarm.
It's not.
Got a coin Arbor up.
Yeah, and that's only enough to really keep him at parity. Although Language Hacker hasn't yet hit anything that's going to totally destroy Fled. He's getting there. He's getting there, but Fled's doing it just.
The longer this Overseer lives, the harder it's going to be, right? And Mukla making its first and last appearance in this series. Bananas are, essentially unplayable, right? Because he just doesn't have a minion. He's still looking for Glowfly Swarm. Okay, no Glowfly Swarm, but that does give him some options. He can go Solar Eclipse Arbor up this turn.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff. Yeah, and Language Hacker's facial expression changed in a hurry there as well.
There it is. Yep. Yep.
So he's having to trade.
Yep.
Fled is overloaded next turn, but we'll be able to maybe banana a little bit.
Yeah, but the pack mules are going to block both of those attacks. He only has 4 mana available, so he's going to banana hero power down something, probably the Void Touched Attendant. There's also a Far Watch post on the board now. So, and what was that, push 3? So he'll be at 22. And then he'll go into... Yeah, but then he'll go into 7 mana with 2 increased cost cards in hand. And Anaconda, but not really much follow-up to it. We'll get back into it in a second. Again, the pack mules are just
unpacking everything.
Here.
Yeah. There is also that Cenarian Ward in Fled's hand, which could be a big deal. I think he's going to get to 8 mana. He might not be in a very healthy state when he gets there, but that might be a final throw that he gets to make. And of course, it is double elimination. If he does lose this, he does get to play Banterface for the right to progress to today's final, which will get him to the semi-final if he gets through. And yeah, lots of damage came down, and Fled didn't draw his way out of it yet. So all right, that's Cenarian Ward. Good luck, everybody.
He needs something that affects the board immediately.
You're in my school now.
That is
huge. Goodness.
That is
now you've got to hope
massive.
that you hit the right things.
So he's looking for Mukla and Overseer would be perfect. Firewatch post, Mukla.
He'll take it.
All right.
He'll take it. And
there
it
is.
It up.
That is
Fled
a brutal
in the
loss.
final, and it's going to be Language Hacker on the back of that Cenarian Ward who ends up having to take on what today might be his nemesis, according to himself, basically, in Banterface. And that was a shocker. I mentioned the Cenarian Ward might help, but I didn't, in my wildest dreams, really expect Troublemaker in to just win the game.
It also needed the Lightning Bloom as well, right? Because the Cenarian Ward wasn't playable. It had to be essentially exactly Lightning Bloom in that scenario, and something that it could attack immediately, or he was still probably dead, because Language Hacker was pushing a ton of damage to face, and then really from there it's just a selection of hero powers that gets it done outside of second Cenarian Ward. So quite a brutal loss for Language Hacker, to be honest. It was looking good for him. You can see what his lineup's trying to do, and you can see that it was succeeding at what it was trying to do. But when you're building a lineup that's supposed to be, hard targeting something, even beating it 3 times in a row can be tough, right? You have to have such a high win percentage against a deck with all 3 of your decks in order to consistently win 3 times in a row. And now Language Hacker moves on